In the North Kivu region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are over 1 million internally displaced people. At least half shelter with local families, the others in camps managed by UNHCR. Now on BBC World News, life in Limbo.
Around 16 million people globally have fled conflict to find sanctuary in another state. They are refugees. But there's a lesser-known group of dispossessed. More than twice the number of refugees. These people are also displaced by war or persecution, but remain inside the borders of their own country.
If you are a refugee, you are protected by international law. But if you are an internally displaced, you are under the authority of your own state, of your own government. That can be part of the problem.
In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, conflict has displaced 1.5 million of its people. Many have experienced the horrors of war. Internally displaced people don't enjoy international protection in the same way as refugees do. But those on the ground now hope a new African Union Convention could help improve the situation of the internally displaced in Africa. It could provide the first ever regional legal framework to protect and assist them.
It's time that from these discussions, which I think are very well-meaning, there should also be very well-meaning actions.
Africa is the continent most burdened by the weight of internal displacement. Massive populations living in limbo represent a tremendous waste of human potential, as millions reach adulthood with little or no education. In Geneva, at the headquarters of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the problem of internal displacement has been a growing concern.
It's true that many states make a huge effort to guarantee their citizens that are displaced the same rights that all other citizens have, and I think we should recognize that. But there are some situations in which people really suffer very dramatic violations of their human rights. And we believe that we need to have enhanced forms of international cooperation to find ways to respond to the needs of people.
North Kivu, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Nearly 1 million people have fled civil war in this province alone. Instead of fleeing into neighbouring countries, they found refuge closer to home, next to the town of Goma. The heads of state of the African Union have now signed a convention which aims at establishing a regional legal framework for internally displaced people in Africa. So will these new arrivals at the Mugunga camps enjoy the protection that they need?
The Mugunga camps were established from 2006 when we had a high influx of internally displaced people fleeing from different areas in North Kivu province. At that time we were talking hundreds arriving on a daily basis, and then we established Mugunga 1 and later on we had Mugunga 2. And in total all the camps in Goma had at least 140,000 internally displaced people who had fled as a result of the conflict.
The main battles raged between the militia CNDP and the rebel FDLR, many of whom allegedly led the Rwandan genocide in 1994, then fled across the border into the Congo. Since then, the Congolese army have continued to battle against these and other rebel forces, causing more displacement and more misery. Mother of 4, whom we will call Jay, is part of the tragedy of forced displacement in Africa. She fled fighting in the northern territory of Masisi. She's been living in Mugunga Camp 2 for 2 years. When peace came, she later married and had 3 children. The militia returned, abducting Jay and her husband.
Tuba mupori, jua kwa na wakia mupori. Kutubashie wote kuna sema se tutabaoa jua wakati mbari mkataka tena niko nao.
Sadly, most of these people have similarly tragic stories to tell. Since Jay's arrival at the camp 2 years ago, the population has exploded.
With the high influxes of internally displaced people arriving on a daily basis, it so happened that we needed also to respond to their daily needs, survival needs, to save their lives. And that means providing them with food, sanitation facilities, health centers within the camps, water services, also providing them with security services. This needs a lot of organization, a lot of interagency planning between the different UN agencies and the international NGOs, and including the government itself.
In the last few years, the camps have evolved into living, breathing towns. From mosques to playgrounds, cafes, hair salons and markets, the displaced have developed their own homes and communities.
In addition to the assistance that they receive from the international community, they try to do something for themselves. And I think I must commend these people because they are very industrious. I think it's out of survival.
The Norwegian Refugee Council manages the day-to-day running of the camps on behalf of the UN. As well as looking after their basic physical needs, they ensure that the different communities amongst the 60-odd thousand residents live peacefully alongside each other. The displaced have sometimes brought with them ethnic tensions. This is being tackled by grassroots democracy.
There are systems put in place to elect president of the camp and vice president. There are also different commissions set up for water, for women and so on. And that is one of the ambitions here. More and more of the activities in the camp should be taken over by the displaced. And that is also empowering them. In some sense, that will also reduce the conflicts.
Security in the camp is perhaps the biggest issue. As the UN's peacekeeping force patrols overhead, government police on the ground are responsible for enforcing law and order.
Security has been one of the major concerns of the entire community and UNHCR as the protection lead agency. We try to keep the camps free of armed soldiers as well. And sometimes it has happened that the soldiers have invaded the camp and looted the camp and fired shots in the air.
Military personnel now have to leave their weapons at the gate. Every new arrival is registered, their identity logged, to ensure armed militia can't infiltrate the camps. In spite of the security, some women like Jay are still vulnerable. Attempts have been made to provide firewood by many NGOs, and utilities are set up closer to women's homes, making them less vulnerable to attack.
Sexual abuse, sexual violence has been a common phenomenon. We have also made sure that the water points are closer to the dwelling parts, and so that access to water is not exposing them to rape or any abuse.
Aid organizations such as Women for Women have provided counseling for trauma victims like Jay.
La majorité des femmes qui ont vécu cette situation ne parlent pas. Pour le moment, on a une vingtaine de femmes qui viennent nous dire, mais par rapport à 1000 femmes que nous encadrons cette année, c'est minime.
Not only does the centre help women through the traumas of war, they also learn skills that they can take home and use during peacetime. The African Convention on Internal Displacement promises to improve the protection of women. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees believes that this will reinforce governments' commitment to helping their internally displaced people.
After the Iraq War, there was a re-emergence of national sovereignty as the key element in international relations. And what we have witnessed is that in some circumstances, it has been very difficult for humanitarian agencies, for instance, to be able to deliver protection or assistance to people because access is not granted to them. I hope this African instrument will be a pioneer one, and I hope this will make people understand that the first element of the national sovereignty is exactly the responsibility to guarantee the rights of the people of the state.
Others on the ground hope that the new convention will result in giving the Congo the greater stability that it needs by reducing the problems of displacement.
It's time that from these discussions, which I think are very well-meaning, there should also be very well-meaning actions.
Africa is the continent most burdened by the weight of internal displacement. Massive populations living in Limbo represent a tremendous waste of human potential. Internally displaced people don't enjoy international protection in the same way as refugees do. But those on the ground now hope a new African Union Convention could help improve the situation of the internally displaced in Africa. It could provide the first ever regional legal framework to protect and assist them. In another state. They are refugees. But there's a lesser-known group of dispossessed. More than twice the number of refugees. These people are also displaced by war or persecution, but remain inside the borders of their own country.
If you are a refugee, you are protected by international law. But if you are an internally displaced, you are under the authority of your own state, of your own government. That can be part of the problem.
In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, conflict has displaced 1.5 million of its people. Many have experienced the horrors of war.
In the North Kivu region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are over 1 million internally displaced people. At least half shelter with local families, the others in camps managed by UNHCR. Now on BBC World News, life in Limbo.
Around 16 million people globally have fled conflict to find sanctuary.